What it do, Dream Team? It's your boy Neal back with another reaction video, guys. Here we are with destroying the myth that Michael Jordan dominated a weak era. Now, there are a lot of arguments about this. I feel like MJ's era was very strong. No disrespect to the 90s at all. I feel like it was more of a dominant big man than more elite guards back in the 90s. I feel like it was more of a big man's game back then. MJ just was an elite guard over everybody, but other than MJ, it was more so an era of the big man. But before we dive into this, what I need you guys to do is hit that subscribe button, ring that notification bell, get a video a thumbs up so it gets suggested. Social media and Patreon, all up top. You want to subscribe to any of it, put all the links in the description. All you got to do is hit the link, follow me, talk to me, human. I'll talk back. If you guys got a favorite video suggestion, you can subscribe to Patreon or drop it in the comment section. What we got, MJ? Greatness. Spin. Got him. Yeah. Nothing you can do.
It's a narrative we've heard over and over again, often from people who want to diminish Jordan's legacy. The claim
which is crazy. He's MJ, bro. Like, I would never diminish Michael Jordan's legacy because the footprint he left on basketball is humongous.
Over and over again, often from people who want to diminish Jordan's legacy. The claim is that Michael Jordan dominated a weak era. He didn't start winning until Magic got HIV, until Bird retired because of back problems, and until the Pistons run was done. People assume that because Jordan couldn't win in the 80s, but then won in the 90s, that it's because the competition weakened. But that's an opinion that's severely lacking context. When Jordan was losing in the 80s, Michael was performing at an MVP level, but Scottie Pippen hadn't developed into a co-star until about 1990. Up until that point, Jordan was a lone all-star with a collection of role players going up against the super teams of the 80s. As good as Jordan was, alone he wasn't enough to take down a collection of all-stars like Larry Bird.
You can be as great as you want on your own. You can be the greatest thing since sliced bread. But when you have to face a better team, basketball is just not a sport that you can win without help. It is not a sport you can win without help. So without the proper help, you can be the greatest thing to ever touch planet Earth. Without teammates, you can't win.
Jordan was, alone he wasn't enough to take down a collection of all-stars like Larry Bird, Kevin McHale, and Robert Parrish, or a Pistons team with Isaiah Thomas, Joe Dumars, Bill Laimbeer, and Dennis Rodman. It takes a team to win in the NBA, and once Scottie Pippen developed into a co-star, the Bulls never looked back. There's also the narrative that when the Bulls finally broke through and beat the Pistons in 1991, it was because the Pistons had become old and the Bulls were younger. This is a bogus narrative that does nothing but discredit the Bulls' greatness. The Pistons' best player, Isaiah Thomas, was only 29 years old. Joe Dumars was 27 years old. Mark Aguirre was 31. Bill Laimbeer was 33. And Dennis Rodman was 29. Most of their best players were in the prime age of their careers, yet the Bulls were too much for them. At that point, we had seen the Bulls and Pistons face each other in the playoffs 4 years in a row. So although the matchup between the Bulls and Pistons was getting old, the Pistons certainly were not.
No, I think it's just the point of Mike just continued to get better every year. But then, like he said, Scottie really came into his own at that point. Like, Scottie started becoming that guy, Scottie Pippen. You feel me? And so when Mike had that number 2 guy, and then everybody started getting better, and he started swinging that ball and trusting his teammates more, they were unstoppable.
The matchup between the Bulls and Pistons was getting old. The Pistons certainly were not. The Bulls didn't start winning because the talent around the league had weakened. They won because a prime Jordan got some much-needed help that the other stars like Thomas and Bird had been enjoying throughout the 1980s.
Big time.
This weak era narrative doesn't just stem from Jordan's failures in the 80s, but it also comes from people discrediting the teams he faced in the finals throughout the 90s. So with that being said, let's break it down year by year, looking at each team Jordan faced in the NBA Finals. The 1991 LA Lakers. The 91 Lakers finished the year with the third best record in the Western Conference with a 58-24 record. They
that
were
was
led
third. God dang, they were going crazy.
Third best record in the Western Conference with a 58-24 record. They were led by a still elite Magic Johnson, who even at 32 years old, still put up his usual 20 points and 12 assists per game.
Jeez.
James Worthy was his usual running mate, who was averaging 21 points per game over the course of the year. There was also quality supporting players like Byron Scott, Vlade Divac, and Sam Perkins. With all of that being said, this was not the same Lakers team of the 1980s.
Of course not.
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar had recently retired, and both James Worthy and Byron Scott suffered injuries in Game 4 of the series versus the Bulls.
Really?
Magic Johnson...
It was bad over by the end. But yeah, Kareem, I mean, you got another guy who gets a lot of arguments in the GOAT conversation. Alongside that Lakers team, you see why they was winning so much. You had Magic, you had Worthy, you had Kareem, bro. Like, actually, they had a super team. Like, they was going crazy. And so this team definitely wasn't as good just because they didn't have Kareem anymore. But I don't discredit the Lakers were still a great team. And MJ and them destroyed them. Was it 4-1?
And Byron Scott suffered injuries in Game 4 of the series versus the Bulls. Magic Johnson simply didn't have enough support to make the series interesting for Jordan and the Bulls. And the Bulls won the championship comfortably in only 5 games. In my opinion, this was the easiest opposition Jordan ever faced in the NBA Finals. The 1992 Portland Trail Blazers. The 92 Blazers finished the regular season with a 57-25 record, which was the best record in the Western Conference. They were coached by Rick Adelman, who was a respected coach around the league and an annual Coach of the Year candidate. Adelman won nearly 60% of his games over his career and regularly coached teams into being elite squads defensively. This Portland team was no exception, as they were ranked the third best team in the league defensively that year. They were obviously led by Clyde Drexler, who was in the prime of his career, averaging 25 points, 7 boards, and 7 assists. Clyde was the second best shooting guard in the league behind Jordan. Behind their superstar in Clyde, they had plenty of depth to back him up. Clyde's co-star was the point guard Terry Porter, who averaged nearly 20 points per game and orchestrated the team's elite offense. Terry was also one of the most lethal and efficient three-point shooters in the game, which helped spread the floor for the Blazers. At small forward, they had the 29-year-old Jerome Kersey, who just 2 years prior was averaging 20 points per game of his own. They also had Buck Williams at power forward, who was a walking double-double. He was the Rookie of the Year his first year in the league, and Buck was also one of the best defenders in the league at his position. Buck made 4 all-defense teams and was a 3-time NBA All-Star. On top of all of that, they had other quality and veteran players with experience, like the scrappy Danny Ainge, Clifford Robertson, and Kevin Duckworth, and each of those guys had made All-Star appearances in their careers. The Deep Blazers had a total of 6 players who averaged double-digit scoring that year, compared to the Bulls, who only had 3 players, Jordan, Pippen, and Horace Grant. So I think you get the point. This Blazers squad was absolutely loaded with talent, and although many of the names on that team have since been forgotten, it would have been absolutely...
I was going to say, besides Clyde, and I've heard of the name Terry Porter, but I really didn't know who the other guys were. But that's just because I didn't watch basketball. I was born in 95, so... But yeah, I don't know the other guys.
And although many of the names on that team have since been forgotten, it would have been absolutely ludicrous in 1992 if you had said their team was weak. The 1993 Phoenix Suns. The 93 Suns had finished the NBA season with a 62-20 record, which was the best record in the entire NBA.
That's great.
Not only did they have the best record in the league and the league's top-rated offense, but they also had the league MVP.
Yes, sir.
Charles Barkley was one of the greatest players in NBA history, who was just 29 years old and coming off of a season where he averaged 25 points, 12 rebounds, and 5 assists. Helping Barkley was an elite 26-year-old point guard, Kevin Johnson, who was a 3-time All-Star and had been on 5 All-NBA teams. Kevin Johnson, the energy and effort behind the Suns season, and had averaged 18 points and 9 assists that year. On this year's Suns was also the recently acquired Danny Ainge, who crossed paths with Jordan a lot in the playoffs.
Come on, Danny Ainge. Danny Ainge ain't that guy at this point, man. Danny Ainge, I'd have to look up his stats, I guess. I don't know what Danny Ainge was at this point, but
Was also the recently acquired Danny Ainge, who crossed paths with Jordan a lot in the playoffs. They also had Dan Marley, who was one of the best rim defenders in the NBA at this time, and was also an elite three-point shooter who was chipping in 17 points per game that season. Add in quality veteran scorers like Tom Chambers and Cedric Ceballos, and what you have is one of the greatest teams ever to fail to win a championship. I'm telling you guys, this Phoenix team was incredible. They had absolutely everything, but it just wasn't meant to be. The Bulls were clicking at the right time, and Jordan had arguably the greatest final series of any player ever, as he averaged an incredible 41 points, 8.5 rebounds, and 6.3 assists over a hard-fought six-game series. The 1996 Seattle Supersonics. This Sonics team was another nasty one. The 96 Sonics finished their season with a 64-18 record, which was the best record in the Western Conference, but was still overshadowed by the Bulls' 72-10 record. They were coached by a Coach of the Year winner, George Karl, and with the exception of Jordan's Bulls, the Sonics had the best defense in the league that season.
Give me that.
This Sonics group didn't have a single player who averaged over 20 points per game that season, but they were extremely gritty and well-balanced. They had their prime superstar tandem of Gary Payton and Sean Kemp. Kemp averaged nearly 20 points and 11 boards and was known for his ferocity and aggression around the rim. Payton was also averaging almost 20 points, was an excellent facilitator, and was that season's steals champion and Defensive Player of the Year. Then you had Hersey Hawkins, who was a quality scorer and spark for the Sonics, Detlef Schrempf, a 6'9 small forward who was a two-time Sixth Man of the Year winner who was averaging 17 points per game that season. These are the type of guys that people don't remember, but who are the difference makers in playoff basketball. This Sonics team was definitely championship worthy. With their collection of talent and their gritty defensive identity, they really remind me of the 2003-2004 Detroit Pistons, who used their
I did get to see that team. That was a good team. Yeah, you don't always need the best players to win a championship, and you see that so much. Like it's not about having the best players. It's about having team chemistry. It's about being healthy when that time comes. Health plays a big role in a lot of championships. So being healthy, having that team chemistry, and sometimes you just click at the right time. Sometimes everything just clicks at the right time. Because, that Pistons team, I wouldn't say they had the best players, but team-wise, they played together the best. They were the best team as a collective.
Really remind me of the 2003-2004 Detroit Pistons, who used their team effort to take down the super team Lakers. As worthy as the Sonics team was, no one was beating Jordan and the 72-10 Bulls that season. The 1997 Utah Jazz. The 97 Jazz finished the regular season with a 64-18 record, which was the best record in all of the Western Conference. The Jazz were the second best offense in the league that season, behind Jordan's Bulls, and they were also a top 10 defensive team. If you exclude Magic Johnson and Tim Duncan, then the 97 Jazz had arguably the greatest power forward ever and the greatest point guard ever in their starting five. Stockton and Malone were a dynamic, championship-worthy tandem on both the offensive end and the defensive end. Even beyond Stockton and Malone, the Jazz had plenty of depth that's been forgotten over the years, like Jeff Hornacek, who was a consistent and reliable third option for the Jazz, who was one of the best three-point shooters in the league. You know this Jazz team was legit by simply considering who they had to beat just to get to the finals. In the Western Conference Finals, the Jazz defeated the Houston Rockets in 6 games. A Rockets super team stacked with Hakeem Olajuwon, Charles...
God, they lost to the Jazz team with these three. That's wild. Like I said, it's not always the best players that win. It's the best team.
In 6 games. A Rockets super team stacked with Hakeem Olajuwon, Charles Barkley, and Clyde Drexler leading the way. This Jazz team earned their stripes, but the Bulls handled them comfortably in 6 games. The 1998 Utah Jazz. The 98 Jazz had relatively the same strong roster and finished the regular season with the best offense in the league and a 62-20 record. The most significant thing that changed since the previous season was that the Bulls had weakened. Jordan was 35 years old, Rodman was 37 years old, and
Dang.
Pippen was 32 and had missed nearly half of the season due to his laboring back problems.
Jeez.
Yet despite all of those disadvantages, Jordan still led the
Get a
Bulls
buck,
to win in
young
6
buck.
games over the Jazz for their second straight season. In that final series, Jordan quite literally carried the Bulls as he averaged 33.5 points of the Bulls' 88 points per game that series.
My God.
Now that I've recapped each finals team Jordan faced in the 90s, I want to make my closing point about generational talent.
Give it to
It's
me.
easy for the casual NBA fan to look at Jordan's competition of the 90s and criticize it because people simply don't remember the talent or weren't even watching at the time, so they don't truly know how talented those teams were.
That might be a good
Think of
point.
the impact players in today's game, like Andre Iguodala, Steven Adams, Lou Williams, and Eric Gordon. These are just a few examples of talented players who are often the difference in wins and losses for their
Oh
teams.
yeah, I was about to say I don't. Andre Iggy is an X factor. He can be an X factor. Eric Gordon, he's been good in the past. I feel like he's been solid. Iggy, who else did you name? Some
Of
these
talented
guys-
players who are often the difference in wins and losses for their teams. But in a few
Williams,
decades,
he's been solid.
no one will be talking about these guys. The same
Yeah,
way no
I
one
agree
talks
with
about
that.
guys like Terry Porter,
I agree
Dan
with that.
Marley, Detlef Schrempf, and Jeff Hornacek. At a certain point, people won't remember the overall talent of teams, and it becomes just about the stars. The young
Facts.
casuals will say things like, "So Jordan and Pippen beat Barkley in the finals, big deal. What else did Barkley have?" A lot, actually. Heck, sometimes it's not even the solid role players who get forgotten, but sometimes it's even the star players themselves. A perfect example of a modern player who could eventually be forgotten is Paul George. Sure, he puts up great numbers and was even an MVP candidate for a while this year, but in 2 to 3 decades, people won't be talking about this guy.
Paul George,
How do I know
not
this?
really.
Because I've already seen it with guys like Adrian Dantley, Sidney Moncrief, Clyde Drexler, and Alex English. These were guys who averaged 25 to 30 points per game and carried their franchises year in and year out.
That's crazy.
But into the future, people generally don't talk about the greats who didn't win championships. So again, with that in mind, it's easy to see why people diminish Jordan's competition in the 90s, because when Jordan was playing in the 90s, he was the only one winning. And those are the ones we remember. No matter how you try and spin it, the reality is that Michael Jordan led a Bulls team that dominated an era of legitimate and fierce competition that many people just simply don't remember or just never knew. Thanks for watching my video, guys. Let me know in the comment section how you grade Michael Jordan's competition in the NBA Finals. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.
I respect MJ6. Bro, anybody who wins a championship, you can't disrespect somebody who wins. Like, you can't disrespect how they won, who they won against. There's nothing you can disrespect about it. Like, winning a championship is one of the hard. Only one team out of 30 teams wins. It's one of the hardest things to just have the chemistry right, to play at the top of your game, to make sure you got the help required to win a championship, for the team to be clicking at the right time. Like, there's a lot of factors that go into winning a championship, so you can't really disrespect anyone who won a championship. Or I guess you can't disrespect the championships that they won. That makes sense. And so I guess I don't know what else to say. I mean, I would never diminish Mike's legacy. Mike is one of the most phenomenal basketball players to ever pick up a basketball in the history of basketball. But that's all we got for this one. You guys got a favorite video suggestion, you can subscribe to Patreon or drop it in the comment section. Subscribe to the channel, ring notification bell, get a video a thumbs up so I get suggested. Social media, Patreon, all up top. You want to subscribe to any of it? Put all the links in the description. All you got to do is hit the link, follow me, talk to me. Love talking to you guys. You guys are the most incredible team on YouTube. It's your boy D Neal, out.